Hello and welcome to another one of our Kilmainham Jail on lockdown videos. This is quite a special one because we're posting this on Easter Sunday, the day we normally commemorate the 1916 Rising, and in Kilmainham Jail in particular the execution of 14 of the leaders here in the jail between the 3rd of May and the 12th of May 1916. So we decided we would do kind of a special video from this part of the jail to mark that occasion, given that we're not able to do anything more elaborate this year. Just before we begin, some of the, I suppose, the history of this space, you can see here this very impressive cut stone decorative feature on the wall. That's because this was originally the front facade of the jail. This is what would have faced out onto the road, and it would have been, I suppose, what people would have seen up until the mid-19th century, when they added these very fearsome stone buttresses to the front of the building. On this side, on the west side, this extension enclosed a new workyard. On the other side, it contained accommodation for the governor and a new hospital. Over here then you can see on the wall and on the ground the remnants of a series of huts which were placed here so that men who were sentenced to hard labour and would have been here breaking rocks were able to shelter during bad weather. And this was all part of the Victorian prison regime's belief that prisoners had to be kept separate and silent, so that they weren't to communicate with one another. So even when the weather was bad, they were able to come out here and break rocks, which was, as I said, a very common form of punishment for prisoners sentenced to hard labour. And these rocks would usually then be sold for use in building roads around the country. But of course, as I said, this yard is most famous because it's here that the leaders of the 1916 Rising would have been executed. So over here we have the plaque which commemorates all 14 men. The executions began on the 3rd of May with Patrick Pearse, and the last one then was James Connelly on the 12th of May. Normally we have a very impressive laurel wreath to mark the anniversary on Easter Sunday. So this year we did what we could with the flowers available within our 2-kilometre radius. So the prisoners would have been brought out here at dawn, essentially, for their execution. As I said, the first 3 prisoners to be executed were Patrick Pearse, Thomas Clark and Thomas McDonough. And if we just come around here, this black cross more or less marks the site where the prisoners stood, and they would have faced a firing squad of 12 soldiers. The yard, very similar to what it would have looked like then, I suppose, with the one exception that the huts would still have been in place at that time. And as I said, these executions continued for many days, and other prisoners who were in the jail recorded in their diaries that they would hear every morning the volleys of shots ringing out, as if they were ringing out just underneath their windows, and it was incredibly distressing for those prisoners. We're just coming up to this second black cross because one of the leaders was executed up here. That was James Connelly, and you can see the reason why he was executed at this end of the yard. James Connelly was very badly wounded during the 1916 Rising. His doctors actually didn't think he was going to survive, and he was brought to a military hospital which had been set up during the First World War in Dublin Castle. But the British Army and government were determined that he would be executed, as he obviously was one of the leading figures in the 1916 Rising. So he was brought here in an ambulance to those gates there, and then he was brought in and we believe carried out on a stretcher, and would have sat where this black cross is and he would have faced down in the other direction. And apparently his doctor asked him, would he say a prayer for the men who were about to shoot him, and he said he would say a prayer for all brave men who do their duty according to their own lights. And personally, I often think that he had maybe a particular sympathy for soldiers, because he had been a soldier himself in the British Army. So that's more or less it for us today. Obviously it's very strange to have an Easter Sunday in Kilmainham jail where we have no visitors. This is where the museum was officially opened by Eamon de Valera in 1966 for the 50th anniversary. It's also where President Higgins came on Easter Sunday 2016. So it's kind of very interesting to see in 2020 this very different landscape in terms of the commemoration of the Rising. But I suppose our duty now is just to stay safe and look after each other. So hopefully you all have a great Easter, and we'll see you here for another video in the coming weeks. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.